Defend, then deny. The old politician catch-22. And in this breaking story, the senator from Donald Trump's home state of Florida, Mr. Slippery Slope Rick Scott Free himself, is right at the center of it. And what we have to understand is when it comes to Trump's cabinet picks and the senators that are going to confirm people, when you watch the Texas two-step that Rick Scott does with Jake Tapper over the discussion about the history of Pete Hegseth and his sexual allegations, you will begin to understand that while he lives in the state of Florida where there are sinkholes and swamps, the drain the swamp lexicon couldn't be better associated with a senator than Rick Scott. And if you don't know what he's done in his past, take a look at this.
Florida Governor Rick Scott is arguably one of the worst governors in the United States. He once refused to debate because his opponent had a small fan by his feet. A lot of people don't like this guy. And the reason they don't like him is because he's awful.
Thank you, Florida Governor Rick Scott, for being the grown-up version of Bat Boy.
In 1997, Rick Scott resigned as CEO and chairman of the world's largest hospital chain, Columbia HCA. After his resignation, a federal investigation found the company guilty of Medicare fraud. And not just a little fraud. They had to pay $1.74 billion. Then the largest fraud settlement in U.S. history. Instead of going to prison, Rick Scott, he became governor of Florida twice, which might be worse. As governor, he refused Medicaid expansion and left nearly 1 million people uninsured. And then he used $700,000 in taxpayers' money to cover his own legal fee. To top it off, he's mad creepy. He looks like the star of a Stephen King novel. And that's coming from Stephen King.
Maybe my next horror novel could star Rick Scott.
This is your mic check.
The question is on the Medicare fraud.
Apparently, Rick Scott stopped by a Starbucks and ran into a local woman named Kara Jennings. She saw Rick Scott come into the Starbucks. I don't obviously advocate any type of violent reaction towards people, but I certainly do advocate this type of behavior. I think this is actually really important. I think when a guy like Rick Scott goes to a coffee shop and attempts to walk amongst normal people, he should be called out. So I want to applaud this woman, Kara Jennings. Listen to this.
In fact, you cut Medicaid so I couldn't get Obamacare. You don't care about working people. I'm not talking to you. You don't care about working people. You should be ashamed to show your face around here. You stripped women of access to public health care. Shame on you, Rick Scott.
And this is a guy, after his company had to pay that restitution, who was elected as governor twice. So Trump winning a second time should come as no shock in this country at this point. But when you're allowed as a politician in this country to play this kind of BS that he just did with Jake Tapper, you realize how much trouble we are in. Here it is.
That these anonymous sources say these things without willing to go on your show or some show, and have you asked them all the questions?
A point that you're making here, the woman who accuses Pete of raping her in 2017, although the police, so we should note, did not charge him with any crime. That woman, Pete Hegseth, paid her money and she signed a non-disclosure agreement, so she can't come on my show to talk about it. Do you think Pete should release her from the NDA so that I can ask her the questions that you want me to?
Absolutely not. Think about it. Jake, you know,
absolutely
how many people,
not?
Wait, Jake. We know how many people sign non-disclosures just to eliminate something. Not that they ever did anything wrong, and he was never charged with anything.
Do you want me to ask her questions, or do you not want me to ask her questions? I'm confused.
So I'm not going to suggest that somebody, change a contract that they sign, but okay, this is Trump's nominee. He won. A lot of people don't like the fact that he won. He won. We have to make a change as a Department of Defense. We have the risk of war. The world's on fire. We've got to change how our Department of Defense is run.
Yeah, no,
he's going to do it.
I hear you, but you started this interview and saying you don't like all these anonymous accusations and I should be able to interview these people. I'm saying, okay, shouldn't Pete Hegseth release this woman from her non-disclosure agreement so that I can do what you suggested at the top of the interview you wanted me to do?
Absolutely not. I mean, some of these things are done for a variety of reasons. But look,
well, how am I supposed to interview her and have her not be anonymous anymore if he won't release her from the non-disclosure agreement?
Well, first off, there was an investigation. He wasn't charged. All right, that's exactly what happened. The police did the investigation, and he wasn't charged.
He did pay her money to be quiet, though.
So there was an investigation. He wasn't charged.
I honestly wish I could say that I'm shocked, but I'm not. And if you've not seen the movie, if by chance you have, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, if you haven't seen the movie called Legends of the Fall with Brad Pitt and Anthony Hopkins, this goes back to just post-World War I in this country. And everything that's old is new or has never even gone away. There's a line in this movie because Anthony Hopkins' character can't stand the government because he lost one of his sons in World War II. And when some of the government officials in his small town show up at his house, Anthony Hopkins asked a simple question about a particular individual, and the elected official said, "That's a private matter." And Anthony Hopkins' character response is, "But that's a public office you hold." Supreme Court or people getting any form of consequential justice of what they should be guilty for? Nah. They just defend, then deny. That's what we're facing. So folks, don't lose your mind. Don't go crazy. Share, discuss, talk, stay educated, and always stay frosty.